said, it's like if you read Bhagavad Gita and wherever it says Krishna, it says instead the most attractive one. Wherever it says Rishikesh, it says the master of the senses. See, so you don't have the holy name, you have the translation. So I told them, I said, the Bible's full of holy names, but you translate it out. And that the holy name in the Bible is said, hallowed be thy name, because the holy name chanting is the Yuga Dharma, the teaching for this age. And then I said, why don't you do it?
What replies did the ministers? It was ministers you were speaking to, right?
All Christian ministers, yeah.
Yeah. What did they reply to you?
That they had no answer for that. But that's when it ended. The moderator, who was very pleased, said, well, all right, we'll end on that note.
Because the ministers kind of ended it themselves by not having a reply.
Well, we were running out of time. It was an hour show.
Okay. So, yeah, the good points. I totally agree. We're chanting the holy name. You know, Govinda Dasi said, back in the day, Prabhupada would send us to Grateful Dead concerts, Vietnam rallies, love-ins, be-ins, bed-ins, you name it. Devotees were there wherever there were. And similarly, these days we have the Warped Rock and Roll Tour, Lollapalooza Rock and Roll Tour. It doesn't necessarily mean we're into any of that music, but it's an opportunity. Devotees are capitalists for Krishna. We capitalize on the opportunity to give the holy name. Oh, Rupanuga just disappeared.
We just lost him.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Anyway, so Jai Madhava, yeah.
Nice to see you.
I've been writing to you on Facebook. Jai Madhava, where are you? When are you going to do something? The weeks are going. I mean, Bhaktadas here, Rupanuga is coming back. Bhaktadas said he'd do something a few times, but it's just like it's hard to nail some people down. Because, I got my grandchildren and my children and...
Well, for me, it's a time zone problem.
Okay. Yeah. Well, no, but we could work it out. I'll make myself...
Yeah.
It's difficult because of Pradyumna. He only has between 5 and 7 o'clock in the evening during the week and between 1 and 4 Eastern Standard Time on weekends. So you got to fit him.
This was Krishna's arrangement. I got to speak to Rupanuga for over 30 minutes.
Great. I'm happy.
It was what I wanted anyway. I wanted to see him. And I actually got to speak to him personally. I mean...
Yeah. Well,
this is amazing.
That's what my Zoom is for. A devotee gave me a $200 donation to be able to pay for these Zooms. They're not free. I had to pay them $200 to be able to have unlimited time on Zoom.
I understand.
So therefore, for you, Jai Rupanuga, you're back, Prabhu.
Yeah, I'm back. I'm sorry, I pushed the wrong button there.
That's okay. Yeah, so I was making the point. Govinda Dasi said back in the day, Prabhupada would send us to Grateful Dead concerts, Vietnam rally protests, love-ins, be-ins, bed-ins, you name it. Wherever there was an opportunity for us to capitalize on giving the holy name, then he sent us there, right?
Yeah, he went to the UN building with a bunch of devotees and passed out leaflets there, the peace formula.
Jai. But then again, the anti-party or the opposition would say, yeah, but like for example, when the Iron Curtain was up, we couldn't just go in the street and do chanting. We might end up in a prison.
Right.
Yeah, behind the Iron Curtain, devotees were not allowed to go on Harinam. They were not allowed to practice at home under penalty of investigation. You see, so they had no freedom.
Right.
That's why freedom is a spiritual issue. They had no freedom to do that. So when the Iron Curtain came down, they could go out and do Harinam.
But similarly, some would say, yes, but now Canada and America is becoming kind of communist. They're dictating to us. No, we don't want you out here protesting. We don't want to, or else we're going to freeze your bank account. We're going to, we're going to make it difficult for you. going to make life
Well,
difficult.
we have to know, our leadership has to be intelligent to know when they're got to that point where totalitarianism is going to clamp down on us. Then we have to use our intelligence. But it wasn't that point in New Zealand, and it wasn't at that point in Canada.
Yeah.
That we have to have some bravery, you know. Let me
Right.
read some. Let me read something from Shilpapa. This is from. Let's see. It's from Bhagavatam. In the present day, also, people all over the world may join together in the Krishna consciousness movement and protest against the present degraded governments of the world's godless societies, which are based on all kinds of sinful activities. Srimad Bhagavatam states that in the age of Kali, thieves, rogues, and fourth-class people who have neither education nor culture capture the seats of governments to exploit the citizens. This is a symptom of Kali Yuga that has already appeared. People cannot feel secure about their lives and property. Yet the so-called governments continue and government ministers get fat salaries, although they are unable to do anything good for society. So Srila Prabhupada also says, he says, the fight is there. Chant Hare Krishna. Depend on Krishna. You'll come out victorious. Nishinga Dev will come. So he's telling us to feel secure, be confident, we'll be protected. We have to do our duty. And right now, the only thing that's going to save the situation or has any potency to save the situation is Harinam.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Definitely.
There's nothing going to do it except purity.
Devarmrita Swami, as GBC for New Zealand, said, those who are going out to the protest, they're doing the right thing, Harinam, but at the wrong place and the wrong time.
If the leadership decides, let's say, for example, and let's say they have reason to make a statement like that, but that doesn't stop the devotees from going out and doing Harinam. They go somewhere else. They go where they usually go, let's say, or they go to some other location. If it means that they're going to get arrested if they go and join or stand by next to the protest, well, then don't go there. Go somewhere
Right.
else and chant. The point is to chant.
Right.
We're doing it ultimately for Krishna's pleasure, not for the people. We're doing it for Krishna. He wants us to do it. We're praising him in public. So we can do that anywhere.
Right. At the same time, we use our discretion, like Jiva Mukta, Prabhu, and I, and Pradyumna came with a dozen devotees from Montreal to converge on Ottawa to do Harinam. But if we would have seen the UN goons there with their clubs and machine guns and smashing windows of the trucks, we would have cleared out. I mean, we have some discretion. One devotee made the point to me, maybe it was you, Rupanuga Prabhu, I can't remember who, but that it's important for the leadership to also show that they have some faith in those who are their followers. Not that we have to be dictated to about everything. We also have some discretion. We know when it's safe and when it's not safe.
Well, when you were on that stage, that was the last point of safety, because shortly thereafter they came in.
The next week,
The next week in force. So you, by Krishna's grace, weren't there when that happened.
Yeah.
But they came in on that stage. They came in on those trucks. They came in on all those people camped out. But you weren't there.
Right.
Because they have an agenda. And it's been clear wherever it is, practically. Let them go on for 3 weeks because we're not going to pay attention to them anyway, right? And so, but then we'll go in later and clear them out because people are complaining.
Right.
So they'll see us as coming to help because these people are in the way. We can't get to work. They're making too much noise. I can't get in the building and all this kind of stuff. People start complaining, and then the cops come in. They give 3 weeks. That's very intelligent for them. But
Right.
you were within the limit.
Uh-huh.
Now,
Right.
in New Zealand, they were there to the last. 3 weeks chanting the same tune.
Yeah.
So people learned it.
Right.
That was smart. And they were there. And in their case, the police did not hassle them. like they did everybody else.
But they did come and they burned. They got at the very end. They had books that got burned. Some things got burned.
But they had a chance to get their equipment out of there,
Right.
get it to the road.
They were tipped off. Yeah.
Of course, they were kicked off, but they weren't beaten up, or they weren't attacked.
They were given a tip that you better get out of here because we're going to be torching the place.
Yes. A word to the wise is sufficient.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so we have to use our intelligence, not to say, "Oh, we're going to ban Harinam altogether." That's not correct. We have to depend on Krishna to some degree for protection, right?
Right.
And that's the third step in surrender, is to come under the protection of Krishna. The fourth is to come under his, depend always on him. And the fourth is not to have any separate interest. And the fifth, the last one, because there's six, the last one is to surrender everything. The first one is to accept what's good for Krishna consciousness. The second one is to reject what's not good for Krishna consciousness. The third is to always feel protected by the Lord. And the fourth is to always depend on the Supreme Lord. And the fifth is not to have any separate interests from the Supreme Lord. And the final one is to completely surrender everything. So that stage of, we're in the stage of surrender out there. We're depending on Krishna. We're depending on his protection, I should say. We're depending on his protection. But we have to use our intelligence. Like if it's raining cats and dogs, you put up the umbrella.
Right.
I mean, it's Kali Yuga, and the Rakshasas are in charge, as I've explained before. Srila Prabhupada said they are in charge of society, and they're raining down all this nonsense in so many different forms. Well, we can put an umbrella up. We can't stop them, but we can put up an umbrella.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the holy name. That's the holy name. Isn't that right, Jayamato Guru?
Yes, I totally agree, 100%. But I have a question. I mean, in order to, how can we revive Harinam in America when the temples have been turned into, they don't even have a bhakta program anymore?
Well, it depends.
They don't have temple devotees. I mean, how are they going to? America's really hurting because no Harinams.
Have you seen any of the videos that come out of Washington, D.C.?
Palaka does it.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Palaka, I talked to him. Yes.
Palaka's doing it?
Yes, I saw.
It's taken him years and to get the temple authorities to cooperate. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, they came out on Harinam and distributed books. So
That's good.
So he's been doing that for years. And many
Yeah.
of the people who are joining in his Harinam are not from the temple. They're local people who live outside. They're not all temple devotees.
No, that's I know that's going on.
The
But
local,
it really
sorry, go ahead.
it needs to be ramped up, Things are
Of course.
really
Of course. And in New York, they also have Harinam on a regular basis. And I've heard in Miami they do also. But I've seen the videos from New York.
What
So
do I
it's
say?
some
What do
places.
Sorry, what do I say to a godbrother who says, "Well, Gaura, why should I bother going out anymore? Any new people that come, they're all going to end up becoming so and so's disciples, and I don't really see eye to eye with that Swami. I don't get along with him very well." I mean, my answer would be, well, I need to go out for my own personal purification. And if people can go and see the deity and get a little prasadam, then my work is done. Whose disciple they become after that, that should not be my business. What do you think of that response?
I think that's part of it. But I believe we have to come to reality and preach to people that they can have Srila Prabhupada direct.
Right.
They can read his books, they can associate with him in sound, and they can accept him directly as their Shiksha Guru. If they chant 16 rounds a day, and if they follow the 4 principles for 6 months, they're doing just as a Diksha disciple would do.
Uh-huh.
So if someone's willing to chant 16 rounds for 6 months and follow the 4 principles for 6 months, he is entitled to be recognized as a Shiksha disciple of Srila Prabhupada. And I would also preach to them that this movement is a perfection at home movement. It's not intended simply to be go to the church once a week. It's not churchianity like Srila Prabhupada called it.
Yeah.
His word, churchianity. It's
Yeah.
not churchianity. He said it goes into every walk of life. And then he said, this is back in 67. He said, our propaganda should be like that. Everyone can have a center at home. Every householder can have kirtans and read Bhagavatam at home. We want people to take the idea, he said, it's not that everyone join the society. We want them to take the idea home, introduce it in their private life. So that's called culture. That's a cultural movement. When you have roots in the homes of people, you've got a cultural movement. You can't have a cultural movement without having roots in people's homes.
Yes, correct.
So that was there from the beginning. We want them to take the idea home into their private life, and that's the way you should preach. This is your personal affair. You can practice at home. You take this book and read it at home, and you try chanting, try the experiment for yourself. And Srila Prabhupada, go ahead.
Yes, our God brother. No, I don't. I'll let you finish, please.
No, I'm go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So our God brother Dineshwar Prabhu, he was saying. So do you know? Do you know where the origin of Diksha? And I remember hearing that Srila Jiva Goswami said Diksha comes from Divya Gyan, one who is transmitting.
Divya Gyan. That's right. That's
So
right.
he made the point that since it's Srila Prabhupada who's ultimately giving that Divya Gyan, then ultimately everyone becomes Prabhupada's Diksha disciple. And so why is that not true?
Okay, look, I'm not going to argue the Ritvik position.
Okay.
I'm not going to argue that, but I'll say that Srila Prabhupada gives Divya Gyan through Shiksha.
Right.
It does not require Diksha. And you can, and our position was back in the storefront days, we understood in the Parampara, you could not be initiated by a previous acharya.
Right.
You could not get Diksha from a previous past acharya.
Right. You can't say, well, because I really like Lord Nityananda, I'm directly.
Yeah, so we understood that from day one. There was never even a question about whether you could take initiation from a past acharya or not. That's the rule.
Right. Right. So I mean, I'm just trying to understand their mindset, but
So you can have one Diksha, you can have one in our system, our Parampara, you have one Diksha and you can have many Shiksha.
Right.
But you can't take Diksha from a past spiritual master, past acharya.
So if a current Diksha falls down, then is that devotee obliged to go and get a reinitiation?
I heard Srila Prabhupada say this. I unfortunately didn't write it down, but I heard him say that if one becomes disappointed in their spiritual master, he may take reinitiation. He didn't say he had to.
I see.
He could accept Srila Prabhupada in that case as their param guru, or which is there already, or he could accept Srila Prabhupada directly, because nobody has to go through anybody to reach Srila Prabhupada.
Right.
Srila Prabhupada never went anywhere. He's fully present in his body. He's fully present, full potency. If one surrenders to his body, he's surrendering to Krishna, to Srila Prabhupada, and Krishna through Srila Prabhupada.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to go through anybody to get to Srila Prabhupada. That's what the books are for. If that were true, then what's the point of distributing his books? If you can't become Krishna conscious reading Srila Prabhupada's books, then what's the point?
Right.
And why do you become Krishna conscious by reading his books? For two reasons. You accept what they say, and you associate with him. Just like you said, we thank Narada Muni for coming to us from the pages of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada comes from every page.
Right.
Isn't that right, Jai Madhava?
Yes, Prabhu.
So the answer to your question, I know what you're saying because I felt the same way. Why should I preach if people I convince are going to go get further misinformation from somebody else posing as a transparent medium for Srila Prabhupada?
Right.
So I was thinking like that for some time until I realized that Srila Prabhupada is such a stature. He's a world acharya. He is the only world acharya in this history. Now, Bhaktisiddhanta was a world acharya, Bhaktivinoda was a world acharya, but they stayed in India.
Right.
So Srila Prabhupada came out and preached Achinta Beta Beta Tattva all over the planet. And there's no higher knowledge of one's relationship possible to be understood by the human mind or intelligence than Achinta Beta Beta Tattva.
Mm-hmm.
The closest that came to it was Ramanuja's unity and diversity. But none of the Vaishnava Sampradayas, it came out to preach. They're still sitting there. So it was Lord Chaitanya's mercy that delivered the Yuga Dharma. He's the Yuga avatar. So he delivered the Yuga Dharma through the disciple succession, through Bhaktivinoda Thakur, through Bhaktisiddhanta, and they all came through Srila Prabhupada. The whole parampara came through Srila Prabhupada, and they appear on his purports. So that makes him the world acharya for everybody. He's not just a Sampradaya acharya, he's the acharya for all the Vaishnavas.
That's why
all
in one place Prabhupada said, actually, everybody is my disciple, but they just don't know it yet.
He also told a devotee, this one devotee, I'll remember his name in a minute. He told in an interview, he said, one day I had a doubt, I was having doubts, and I spoke to Srila Prabhupada after he left the class. I said, Srila Prabhupada, we're distributing, by Kuntanath. And Vaikuntanath Prabhu said, we're distributing books to so many people, but if they don't take initiation, how are they going to go back to Godhead?
Yes.
And the answer was, Srila Prabhupada said, anyone who reads my books is initiated.
Is as good as initiated, yes. Mm-hmm.
So that's Shiksha right there.
Yes.
See, that is the same logic that I'm talking about Srila Prabhupada's present in his lecture, especially he's like, I have a comment where Srila Prabhupada made, he said, hearing is better reception than reading. What that means is that when you listen to Srila Prabhupada, you're with him, present in sound. And he also called his books recorded sound. So when you read the books, you're with Srila Prabhupada. But there's an additional dimension there when you hear him. Now,
yes.
listen, this is very important. I sat in the storefront every day for Bhagavatam class, every evening, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for Gita class. And I can tell you with all conviction that when I sit in front of my CD player and listen to a lecture with my eyes closed, it's no different than I was sitting in that storefront in front of Srila Prabhupada and listening to him. There is no difference whatsoever. He's right there. So the potency there in his lectures, the potency is he's there. He never went anywhere. He just transferred everything from Srila Prabhupada Vapu and Srila Prabhupada Vani present before us at once to everything in Srila Prabhupada Vani in his physical absence. So Srila Prabhupada Vani is Srila Prabhupada and his deity and his photographs and his deity on the altar. That's all Srila Prabhupada. But especially Srila Prabhupada is there in sound. So we should preach to new people and have faith in the Lord in the heart that if they listen to Srila Prabhupada, they will be able to discriminate who is a transparent medium and who isn't.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to preach that way.
Good point.
You have to
Yeah,
preach
good
that
point.
way, Madhava. You have to be a transparent medium yourself, and you have to teach them from the books so they're hearing Srila Prabhupada. You're reading Srila Prabhupada to them. If they don't have lectures in Russian. Maybe they have some that were translated, but the actual Srila Prabhupada never spoke in Russian, right? So you are especially responsible for being a transparent medium for Srila Prabhupada. And if you don't change anything, like Srila Prabhupada said, my only credit is I never cheated anybody and I never changed anything. If you don't cheat anybody and you don't change anything, then Srila Prabhupada will get through you to them. That's what it means to be a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. Mm-hmm. It means to share what we've learned from him with other people and don't change anything. So therefore the potency is that when instead of sending, in other words, that devotee who said, I don't want to preach because I don't want them to go to the wrong place. He didn't know how to connect them directly with Srila Prabhupada because he didn't know how to preach about it. He didn't know how to explain to people that this chanting is for you in your life, in your home. And these books are for you to read with your family and friends. Just like Srila Prabhupada, just like Lord Chaitanya Prabhu preached to Kurma Brahman. Kurma Brahman wanted to join him. And Lord Chaitanya insisted he stay home and read Bhagavad Gita and Chaitanya and Bhagavatam. And so when Lord Chaitanya left Kurma Brahman's home, he looked back and he saw in the distance that Kurma Brahman was still following him. And the next verse said, and Lord Chaitanya took care to send him home. So that preaching about home, perfection at home has been around since the movement began. And listen to this. This movement started in people's homes. Lord Chaitanya, at the age of 20, told all the people in Navadvip to chant in your homes. So they all chanted in their homes. And they raised such a din that the local Muslims went to the Qazi and complained. But when the Qazi went to break the Mridanga, it was in somebody's house. He went in somebody's house. It was a home invasion. And he smashed the drum. And then after that, the movement hit the streets.
Jai.
When Lord Chaitanya called 100,000 men together with torches to go and convince the Qazi that Harinam goes on. So they went to the streets as a protest. You see? So initially, the whole thing started in people's homes.
Right.
But when it was prohibited to be chanting in their homes, that's when Lord Chaitanya started the civil disobedience movement for the right cause.
Mm-hmm.
And he was 20 years old. With a snap of his fingers, 100,000 people came together in a matter of hours, all armed with torches. And there was such a huge crowd that they couldn't help but trample some of the gardens the Qazi had. Some of the outbuildings were crushed.
Right. Lord Chaitanya had to calm them down.
Yes.
And then he sat with the Qazi on the front stairs there and said, you accept the cow as your mom and your bull as your dad because they plow the fields and give milk? Yeah, okay, yeah, I do. Then why are you eating your mother and father? Why are you killing them?
That's cannibalism. That's cannibalism. Listen, we should not be surprised that for centuries, every year, billions and billions of innocent creatures, what to speak of mother cow and father bull, what about the billions of chickens and the hogs and the fish? There's fish farms. They have there's just billions and billions of living entities killed for the sake of the human tongue every year. This couldn't go on forever. It's been going on for centuries already. So the time's come for a payback. Mother Nature is paying back. As ye sow, so shall ye reap. And that's happening right now.
Yeah, I was surprised when I went to pick up Purna Pragya Prabhu's book, Life Beyond Darwin, that he just sent me in the mail. And there was a young lady behind the counter, and she had her head wrapped up. What is that called, the hijab or the burqa? I don't know what it is. Either of them. And I said, Salam alaikum. And she said, Salam alaikum back. She was happy that I said that. And I said, Allah Akbar. And she said, oh, Allah Akbar, how do you know this? I said, oh, I've been to India many times, and I've met Muslim people over the years, and I forget exactly how I segued, but we were talking about. I think I was talking about health, and I mentioned, I've been a vegetarian for 47 years, or a Krishnatarian. I've not eaten any meat, fish, eggs, or chicken. She said, oh, I've been a vegetarian all my life. I said, really? I said, you're a Muslim and you've never eaten any meat? She said, no, when I was a little girl and my parents would try to get me to eat meat, I refused. I wouldn't eat any meat at all. And I said, wow. I said, how did your parents deal with that? She said, well, my mother had to cook vegetables for me because I refused to eat meat. And I said, is there anything in the Quran that you know of that forbids you from eating meat? She said, no, not really. I said, I believe there's a statement that one should not be cruel to their camel. She said, oh, they eat camels. over. And I said, which country are you from particularly? She said, Palestine. I said, oh, Palestine, a lot of difficulties there. She said, yes, there's been wars. And I said, it's Israel claiming that Palestine belongs to them, right? Something like that. She said, yes, but we've been there for so long. I said, yes, it's too bad. I said, well, so, why did you? She said, well, being a vegetarian, it's more healthy anyway. She said, we are not obliged as Muslims, but I've chosen to be vegetarian just because it's more healthy. And so I gave her a higher taste. I gave her a copy of the higher taste. She was very grateful. It was
Yeah.
a higher taste that had dropped in the water and it was all bumpy. It wasn't. I said, but it's still a good book. She said, oh, I'll read it. Thank you so much.
So by Krishna's grace, she was able to come in contact with you.
Yes, she got some of Prabhupada's mercy.
Yes. Transparent medium Gaura Das.
I wish. I try a little bit. Last time when we spoke with Jivan Mukta Prabhu, um, um, he had this question for me. He said, okay, so Rupanuga Prabhu has made the point that Srila Prabhupada said, by taking sannyas, then my understanding was, so now I shall have to accept disciples, because that's what a sannyasi does. But because Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur intended to create a GBC, and Prabhupada also wanted a GBC, then they broke from tradition. They broke from tradition in that they broke from tradition. Hare Krishna, Lakshminath Prabhu. Here's Rupanuga Prabhu. He's here. We're we're waiting for you to join in. Can you join in?
But
Hey, I'm gonna go. I think I'm gonna go inside. I'm outside now, and it's a little.
Get
noisy.
inside. Get inside. Well, come and join us. Haribol.
okay.
Haribol.
So look, so this,
Yeah, so-
these, wait. Are we discussing this something that he was supposed to wait for another time, next time? Or I can answer this question. So just make the question clear again, please.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm not sure exactly how clear I am, but this was part of his point. I've already called Jivan Mukta. I've asked him to please join us. I don't know if he'll get the message in time.
Okay, so what?
But one of his points was that, okay, so Prabhupada and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta and Prabhupada broke from the tradition that as soon as you're a sannyasi, then immediately you have the right to accept disciples. But
No, wait a
how?
minute. Wait a second. The etiquette is that in the presence of your guru, you don't take disciples.
Right.
Okay, so he created sannyasis. Bhaktisiddhanta created sannyasis. And Srila Prabhupada said, my Guru Maharaj created sannyasis. I'm creating grahastas. So he created all these sannyasis. You have to understand what the plan was Bhaktisiddhanta had. The first thing he had to do was deal with this leftover problem from Bhaktivinoda Thakur's time, which Bhaktivinoda Thakur had to deal with, is that our movement had become accepted as a sex cult. So the first thing he did was to convince the elite, and you see many photographs of him with the elite, with garlands at different festivals and so on, to convince them that this movement was genuine. So when he did that, and while he did that, he established 64 mats, large and small, 50 of them within Bengal, and he staffed them. All these sannyasis traveled with him with great austerities, and they established all these mats. So
Right.
the next step of the plan was he was training them to come out of India and preach. That's what the point was. Every town and village, you've got to go there. So he created sannyasis to travel outside of India, not to stay in India. And you read my letter, which is a controversial letter, which I think we're supposed to talk about some other time, about how he was disappointed in his disciples that they couldn't catch up the next stage in his movement, which was to come out and preach in mass.
Right.
Now, when Srila Baba, look, I don't want to get off the subject, but I'm trying to explain why he was creating these sannyasis. Another thing we have to remember is that the Indian gentlemen were very much attached to extended families, much more than we know in the West. They were much more extended families, big families, and they were all very much obligated within the family structure, both the husband's family and the wife's family. They all were interchanged. It was very big family unity. And sannyas was a difficult thing because they had to break off all these relationships to be a sannyasi. But he wanted them to go out. Now, the etiquette is while you're there in front of the guru, you don't take disciples. The disciples are all his.
Right.
That's what Srila Prabhupada wanted in the July 9th letter. He made it clear that these men I've appointed, when they initiate while I'm here, they're mine, my disciples.
Right.
But the future had already been discussed on May 27th, and I was there about the future. July 9th was about the present. What to do with all those hundreds of persons that were crying, praying, calling out for Srila Prabhupada's initiation before he disappeared, which was evident. It was soon. Everybody knew it, including the GBC. That's why we called that meeting with Srila Prabhupada on the 27th of May, the last GBC meeting we had. Okay? I mean, I don't want to get off the subject, but his question is, it's not that they changed any kind of a tradition. The tradition was you don't initiate in presence of your Guru Maharaj. And I'll tell you this much. In 1969, in two letters, one to Kirtananda and one to Hansaduta, Srila Prabhupada told about his plan of having all those examinations.
Right.
Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Bhabhava, Bhakti Vedanta, Bhakti Sarvabhauma. And he said that anyone who passed the Bhakti Vedanta examination would take their own disciples.
That's right.
That was his plan.
He said by 1970, I'm hoping that, no, by 75.
75.
69, 70. By 1975, I am hoping that all my disciples will have the title of Bhakti Vedanta and that they will be initiating. So, oh, interesting. So one has to be up to a certain academic level.
But listen, above Bhakti Vedanta was another exam.
Bhakti Sarvabhauma.
Yes, right. That means that accepting disciples is not the final stage, because they still had to follow, they still had to pass the next exam, even after he authorized to accept disciples. Because that plan didn't work out, because in 1969, the Bhakti Shastra exams that were sent back to India were all lost. So the next exam didn't happen until 76 for Bhakti Shastra.
Right.
So he wanted his disciples to pass this level of Bhakti Vedanta before they could initiate. And we don't find that criteria applied now for all those sannyas, all those gurus who are certified. Did they all take that exam? Did they all take all the exams up to Bhakti Vedanta? I don't think so. But they were pre-certified. So the people that came didn't have to trouble themselves to examine whether this person I can surrender for the rest of my life. They were simply presented a lineup of pre-certified gurus. So your job is simply to choose. You don't have to examine. You don't have to question. And Srila Prabhupada said one should sit for 1 year in front of the guru and the prospective guru, and the guru should sit for a year in front of the prospective disciple to examine each other to see that they were willing to accept or surrender to each other. And if this is not followed, then this parampara is weakened. It was already a little weakened because Srila Prabhupada had no Uttama Adhikaris to succeed him. They were all Madhyama Adhikaris. But Madhyama Adhikaris, I read this, and I think it was Nectar Devotion, that a Madhyama Adhikari can't fall down. I mean, a real Madhyama Adhikari can't fall down because his faith is too firm. His faith is too firm. He may not be expert in reciting many verses, but his faith is firm, and he can tell the difference between Krishna, the devotees, the innocent, and the atheists. That he can tell. It doesn't take Uttama Adhikari to know that. And it doesn't take Uttama Adhikari to preach. And Srila Prabhupada, there's another thing about it, they say he came down. Srila Prabhupada never came down from anywhere. He just preached from wherever he was, the highest platform. But because he preached, they say, well, he came down to the Madhyam. He came down. He didn't lose anything. He just preached as a Madhyamadacharya would preach, making those divisions, those 4 divisions, for the sake of the mission. But he never left anything or left any power or potency behind to preach. He didn't descend down to a lower form. Srila Prabhupada's a very special personality. It was upon his shoulders that the parampara rested in order to come out of India. I mean, that's a great empowerment and a great responsibility and a great confidence shown in Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada is the world acharya, as I just explained earlier, because he's preaching Athinta Beta Beta Tattva, and there's no one who can understand anything higher than that, which was given by the Lord himself, like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He's the one who introduced Athinta Beta Beta Tattva. And nobody can outdo God when understanding himself. So we have, as our spiritual master, an extraordinary personality who's so extraordinary that when he performs an arti, Lord Brahma and Narada Muni come. That happened in his installation arti in London. And Srila Prabhupada told them that evening, you make 2 little Vyasasans and put them on the altar, one for Lord Brahma and one for Narada Muni. And I know this from the person, the artist who did it, an email he sent to me, this very description how he was instructed to do that. And he did it because they came. And Srila Prabhupada also told them that they want to come back for the evening artis, so you have to make a seat for them. So can you see that? Understand that? Srila Prabhupada was such a great personality that he could, it's not that he demanded, but he commanded such respect from Lord Brahma and Narada Muni that they came to watch him do an arti. And they wanted to come back again and again. So who is Srila Prabhupada? We have to understand it. We're dealing with some great soul, great personality. We have just a slight understanding of his greatness. But that's enough. Because Prabhu means the master, and Pada means whose lotus feet. Everyone pays his respects. So I think it's very interesting. After Srila Prabhupada's disappearance, a whole bunch of Bhaktivedantas start appearing. Everybody start calling this Bhaktivedanta this, Bhaktivedanta that, Bhaktivedanta that. One can say, well, they're imitating. Another person may say, oh, they're just acknowledging Srila Prabhupada's greatness. So they're naming themselves after him.
What's your thought on that?
I just said it. Either they're doing it to imitate or they're doing it to emulate. Either way, it's fine.
Okay, so you have no issue with that then?
I don't have an issue with it, but I can see there's 2 sides to it. I tend to think it's mostly imitation. I think it's mostly, claiming that we're all equal. All the Bhaktivedantas, because after Bhaktisiddhanta, the teaching was, well, he was the last parampara acharya. But actually, Srila Prabhupada was the last parampara acharya. That's why his books are the law books for the next 9,500 years. We don't need any more acharyas. We've got it all. Because they're all, whoever is going to be here has to follow Srila Prabhupada's books. They're the law books. So all I'm trying to understand myself and trying to explain something about who our beloved spiritual master Srila Prabhupada is. Extraordinary individual who has the power to accept anyone as his disciple, as a Shiksha disciple, if they agree to accept them as the highest spiritual authority in their life, and they agree to follow his instructions. That's what a disciple is. And if they share what they've understood from Srila Prabhupada with others, that's the movement. That's Lord Chaitanya.
Well, going back to the earlier point, so Srila Prabhupada said, back in 69 to Hang Sadhuta, so I'm hoping by 1975, all my disciples will have the title of Bhaktivedanta, which means Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhava, which is the first 6 cantos, Bhakti
Vedanta.
Vedanta is the next 6 cantos. So the whole Bhagavatam, they should have assimilated and understood inside out. And
Okay.
they will all have the title of Bhaktivedanta. They will be initiating. So one question I have is, because it's a big issue in Iscon, it has been a contentious issue, then, okay, well, Prabhupada said all of my disciples, then I guess he must have meant our god sisters too. And others say no. And I'm thinking, well, then why didn't Prabhupada say all the male disciples? Why
That's a misunderstanding. When he was asked by, now I don't copy everything. I keep a card file, but some things I didn't copy down. But I
Right.
heard Srila Prabhupada say to a professor, I believe, when he was asked that question, well, what about, can women become gurus in your society? And Srila Prabhupada said, why not? If one wants to be a professor, it's based on the qualifications,
Right.
not the gender. A PhD is awarded to a person because of their knowledge. So that was his answer. But then he said a few. I
No,
heard that
no,
part. He
now,
said a
local,
few.
now locally here at the Toronto Temple, Prabhupada met with Professor Joseph O'Connell, who is a specialist in Chaitanya Vaishnavism. I met him. Prabhupada, and he asked Srila Prabhupada, can women become spiritual masters? Prabhupada said yes, but not so many. And
Yes.
then he cited Janava Mata, Lord Nityananda's consort, and so then I thought, well, wait a minute. If the women have to be on the level of Mother Janava, then does that mean the men need to be on the level of Lord Nityananda?
No, that's what he was simply explaining, an example of an exalted woman who was accepting disciples. He was saying there's precedent. He didn't say that everybody has to be on her level. He didn't say everyone has to be on her level, just like
Right.
everyone doesn't have to be on his level to accept disciples.
Okay.
That didn't mean one has to be at what she was not. She was Vishnu. She was like a incarnation of Lakshmi Devi. I mean,
Exactly.
she was not a jiva.
Right.
Okay, so we're talking about jiva's behavior and jiva's responsibilities. So you can't imitate, you see. But the woman should be of good character and quality, and she should be knowledgeable, and she should not be motivated by any self-aggrandizement or profit, adoration, distinction, which is a
How
subtle
how
form
will
of
she
self.
how will she award the sannyas order?
How would she award the sannyas order? I mean, I have no idea. If she would be able to do that, because a sannyasi has to do that.
Exactly.
And women cannot be sannyasis.
But they can be initiating gurus.
Well, according to Srila Prabhupada, now that puts a limit. There's a limit there. That's why he said a few. It puts a limit. Mostly, I would assume that mostly women would take initiation from a female guru. I would assume that.
Well, that's what I was thinking. That should be a relief for most of the sannyasis, that they won't have to initiate all these young ladies. They can all be initiated by the Mataji from the Vaishnavi.
Anyway, that's all speculation, but we're talking about what Srila Prabhupada said.
Right.
So we never tried it. In fact,
Fine.
look, there was a meeting with a GBC member, and I have it. It was recorded in the conversation books, in which Srila Prabhupada makes it clear he wanted to give no more sannyas. Finished, he said. And he gave reasons why. But after that, that could be known. But after that, he himself created several sannyasis, but in India. So people say, well, he changed his mind. And actually, the fact that one thing is that he told a GBC member who certainly I never heard about it until I read about it in the conversation book. He didn't tell me. I don't know if he told anybody, but it stayed in that room basically. And so people say, well, you have a record. He said that, but we find that he himself, he changed. But they can't say he changed his mind because you can't speculate on the mind of the acharya. But he did initiate 3 men in India in my opinion, is he did that for the Indian Yatra specifically, to strengthen and protect the Indian Yatra, not as a breaking of his earlier statement, but as a specific arrangement by him, which he could do anytime he liked. It's not that he was contradicting himself or that he changed his mind, but it was never implemented anyway. And we've seen the majority of sannyasis that fell down, including myself. I was initiated in 1972 into sannyas order, returned to my wife in 74, and I offered to resign from the GBC. Srila Prabhupada wouldn't have it. Said, you go on preaching. So I stayed on the GBC until 1989. So, and there were many sannyasis that fell down. All the men who were sannyas, so many of them took sannyas. The first gurus fell down. And so many other sannyasis fell down. So, whatever happened to that? And what would have happened to a movement that was going on based on Grihastha ashram? And I tell you this, Grihastha ashram is no small thing.
No.
Like Srila Prabhupada said, going to a feast and not being able to eat anything.
Yes.
There has to be some sense control.
Yes.
I mean, Grihastha ashram is no small thing. And nothing wrong with it. Bhaktivinoda Thakur had, 12 children? Srila Prabhupada had 5 children. Srila Prabhupada said, in that conversation where he said no more sannyas, he says, what's wrong? What's wrong with Grihastha? I was a Paka Grihastha. What's wrong with Grihastha ashram? Anyway, it's an interesting read, but of course, it never got very far. And I find, and Srila Prabhupada told me in a letter, he said, nobody in the country understands sannyas anyway. And besides that, to be a sannyasi amongst the women who are running around half naked is very difficult.
Yes.
Half the time it looks like they're at the beach.
That's right.
So times have changed. When I was a college student, women at my college, a college in Washington, D.C., this was in the 60s, or late 50s, they were not allowed to wear Bermuda shorts to class.
Wow.
There was a dress code. But that's all history. That's all, whatever they call it, puritanical or whatever they want to call it. But I mean, that's not around, but I mean, that's what it was.
I want to understand from you in terms of the way you understood the May 27th letter. Excuse me for going back for a moment, because I want to get more clarity myself, or maybe I am clear. I just want to double check with you, if according to your understanding, if I'm clear. And in terms of what you understood for how Srila Prabhupada wanted in the process of guru-disciple system to go on in Iscon, what was your understanding then? And the current situation we have in Iscon, are we doing it the way you understood, the way Prabhupada wanted? And if not, what are the discrepancies there?
Wow, that's a huge subject matter. In fact, we were supposed to have that subject matter with a devotee. What's his name?
Jivan Mukta.
Jivan Mukta, who had these questions, and I was prepared to answer, or was going to be prepared to answer these questions just like you're asking at that Zoom. Now, if we're not going to have
coming now. Good. He's, by Krishna's grace, he's coming now. I just got a message from him on the phone.
Yeah, but I mean, we're already been going now. It's now 3:56.
Yes, but the thing is, it is so difficult to bring the two of you together to find a conterminous time that works for both of you. Then I humbly beg, because I put a lot of time and energy into.
All right. But I already in a previous Zoom read to you verbatim the transcript of that meeting, and I also played for you. Unfortunately, the first part was not clear, but you got a better copy. And understand that better copy was inserted into the video to replace the part beginning, which was not very audible. So we've already discussed all these points before in a previous Zoom. So I don't understand why, or not that I don't understand why. I understand you have a question, and I'll try to answer that. But I'm just saying we had a discussion on this before. And is it the same question again? What he intended? I went through the whole thing. And I felt I was qualified to do that because I was present. I was there. There were 18 GBC men there, 19, including myself. And they chose, amongst the 19, instead of bothering Srila Prabhupada, who was very much indisposed, to send only 6 of us in there, the original charter members. And they added Kirtananda out of respect because he was a senior devotee, but he wasn't on the GBC until I think 74 or something, 73. He didn't want to get on the GBC. Srila Prabhupada forced him. So anyway, we went in and Satsrup was appointed to read the questions the GBC had already decided upon to ask Srila Prabhupada. And there were just a handful. And he read them off one by one, wrote down in the GBC record book, as the secretary, wrote down a conclusion, synopsis of what was said. And we all signed off on that record book. I have a copy of all the signatures. And I have a copy of the entry that Satsrup made. And we all agreed on that entry, that it reflected the conclusion of the meeting. And the meeting was recorded. And I made the point before, and I'll make it finally, that the May 27th meeting was a meeting about the future. And that's the first question that Satsrup asked. We want to know about the future after you have left us. The second meeting on the 9th July was a meeting about the present. What to do about the people who are waiting to be initiated. Srila Prabhupada didn't want to make initiations because of his health, he said. So he deputed the same men he'd already picked between the 27th of May and the 9th of July. What, how many weeks is that? 3 or 4 weeks? Over that time, he picked the persons he wanted to be acting as he called regular gurus. And when the question came up of what they were going to do or what was going to happen for the people who were waiting to get initiated from Srila Prabhupada, he turned that over to them to initiate on his behalf.
Jivan Mukta Prabhu has arrived. He's finally here. And
Anyway.
I'm going to ask him I'm going to apologize to him right now because I've been bugging him because it seems so difficult to bring everyone.
Did he hear what I just said? Did he hear what I just said?
That he was deputing these men to continue.
So, okay. So people have taken that recording, or that they had to be recording, or because they weren't there. So they took a transcript. Aside from claiming things were taken out, which is nonsense, nothing was taken out. The recording and the transcript are exactly the same. And I was there in the room. I don't remember, of course, everything, but I remember signing off with the other GBC men. And we're not going to sign. We weren't a bunch of idiots, you know. Srila Prabhupada didn't pick idiots for the GBC. He said, I picked my best men. I have that in print. So we knew what was going on, and we wouldn't sign off on something we didn't understand. We understood the May 27th meeting was about the future. We didn't even discuss the people that are waiting for initiation. It didn't even come up. But it was an issue that was solved by Srila Prabhupada between that meeting and the 9th of July. And it's not the first time he turned over initiation processes to other devotees. He'd been doing that sometimes, but doing it by mail. He would send the names, and then he was allowing some of his men to even pick the names even. But it was all done on his behalf because he was still physically present and he wanted to follow the etiquette that you don't initiate in the presence of your spiritual master.
Can Jivan Mukta Prabhu ask his question now?
Sure, if I could. Sorry, Prabhu. Like, you got to understand that I got a lot, unfortunately, I'm materially, trapped in a lot of things in here, and I've got businesses and stuff. So, Gaura Prabhu, I can't just drop everything.
I understand.
Do you understand?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So anyway, Prabhu, my obeisances, glories to Prabhupada.
Did you hear what I said?
Yes, I heard some of that. But my question was based on the letter that Prabhupada had sent you. And in that letter, Srila Prabhupada makes it clear that this very thing that you mentioned about etiquette, that you don't initiate in the presence of the spiritual master, it did not apply to Bhaktisiddhanta, because Prabhupada was very, very critical of his godbrothers who did follow the etiquette, who did, after Bhaktisiddhanta left, actually, they didn't even follow the etiquette, because if the etiquette was that everyone could just initiate, then they would just initiate. But instead, Prabhupada said, no, they just chose someone to become the acharya. They chose someone to become the acharya when Bhaktisiddhanta said that they should simply form the GBC, continue the preaching, and the acharya would become self-effulgent from within the GBC, from within the preaching movement. So that is totally contrary to the etiquette of the disciple becoming the spiritual master. Totally.
I don't understand. Look, let's get this clear. They didn't form a GBC. And when he's talking about the self-effulgent acharya, he knew he was talking about Srila Prabhupada. He already reserved Srila Prabhupada from the management that they were trying to entangle him in. Had there been a GBC, no doubt about it, Srila Prabhupada, although he was a Grihasta, would have been on it, because after all, they chose him to speak at the final Guru Puja for Bhaktisiddhanta the very year he passed away.
And
Srila Prabhupada made the address. So the etiquette, Srila Prabhupada didn't have anybody initiating, although he did tell what was his name in Hawaii, Siddha Sarup, who had been accepting disciples and before he met Srila Prabhupada and was going to turn them over. And he also said, no, you can go and initiate. He said, no, I want to turn them over to you, which he did. He didn't initiate any more after that, at least while Srila Prabhupada was here. So he actually gave him permission to initiate in his presence, although he was an initiated disciple. He also told either Pushta Krishna or Tushta Krishna that he could start his own movement. And he was a sannyasi that Srila Prabhupada initiated. And he said, I don't want to do it. He said, it's all right, just don't change anything. So the real point is a transparent medium. That's the real point.
Well, there's also that's one point, very, very significant. If not,
I'm trying to understand your question, which is based on this letter I got from Srila Prabhupada. I don't understand.
This is my question. One of the arguments that I always hear is that we have to follow tradition, and the tradition is that the disciple becomes the guru, that you don't initiate until the spiritual master passes on, and that the order has already been given. Lord Chaitanya gave the order for everyone to become guru.
Yeah.
Okay, so Prabhupada doesn't have to say, you could become guru. Now, if we look at that letter that Prabhupada sent to you, in that letter, I see a few things very, very significant. Number one.
Wait a minute, you're changing the subject. You said something about, you made it clear that you can't be initiating in the presence of your spiritual master. That's correct. Well, he didn't ask those 11 to do that. He just asked those 11 to initiate on his behalf while he was still present.
I'm not talking about those 11.
Okay, what are you talking about?
I'm talking about what you just said. You just told us that you don't initiate in the presence of your spiritual master because it's not proper etiquette.
That's right.
Okay, well, what that implies is that when the spiritual master's presence is no longer there, you could initiate.
He never placed any restrictions on any persons outside of those 11 from initiating, and the 11 knew that, and we all knew that.
I'm acknowledging that, but I'm acknowledging that. I'm acknowledging that that's what you're saying.
Okay.
Okay, so we understand that. Okay, but what I'm saying is that bhakti, that is traditional. Yes, that's traditional. That's the way it works. But with Bhaktisiddhanta, that's not how it worked. And Prabhupada presented it in that letter to you. He said, and he criticized his godbrothers for not following the orders of Bhaktisiddhanta. And what was that order? The order was, no one is going to be in the position or authorized to be acharya of the movement. The only authorization is for the GBC to continue the preaching And from within the GBC body, the acharya will become self-effulgent.
Okay,
By
had
their
they had, all right, that's true. Had the GBC before, but there's no, the tradition is about sannyasi. A sannyasi means disciples. A sannyasi is supposed to accept disciples, accept in the presence of his guru.
Okay, so
No,
then why did
he
Prabhupada?
did not listen. He didn't prohibit anybody, any of those disciples, any of his disciples, many of them, most of them were sannyasis. He didn't prohibit them from taking disciples after he disappeared. He prohibited them from choosing one acharya, which they did. He gave them the GBC as a means of management, but he never prohibited. In our tradition, sannyasis accept disciples. That's why Srila Prabhupada said when he took sannyas, shortly thereafter he made a disciple. And so his guru godbrothers, or not his guru, it's not guru god, but his godbrothers, most of them sannyasis, went to Sridhar, who was the senior, and said, what is Swami Ji's position? He's taking disciples. And so he wrote a letter to Srila Prabhupada, said, your godbrothers have come to me. Sridhar wrote this letter. Has come to me and they're asking, you're accepting a disciple? What's the position? And Srila Prabhupada said, he replied, I thought that's what I was supposed to do. Now, this is what he told Pradyumna. And Pradyumna told me this story personally.
Okay, Prabhu, I accept all of that. I do. But I'm going back to what Prabhupada criticized, how he criticized his disciple, his godbrothers, after the passing away of Bhaktisiddhanta. Now, what you're saying is that Prabhupada was critical of them choosing an acharya who supposedly, from what you're saying, is that there would be an acharya, and at the same time, all of the sannyasis within this institution would still be able to initiate, although you still have a primary acharya.
Yeah, but you are speculating because he said, I don't want a acharya to succeed me. There's not going to be an acharya to succeed me. What I want you to do is to form a GBC, and if there's an acharya to emerge, he will come self-evident. And that's what happened with Srila Prabhupada. He was a self-effulgent acharya.
Right, but not
for the Gaudiya Math. He didn't become a self-effulgent acharya for them. He became self-effulgent many years later, after he took sannyas, that he began to carry out the order to come to the West.
Okay, in that letter,
letter,
Prabhupada said that there was camps that ended up emerging, that one of them chose one sannyasi, another chose another. And he says none of them were qualified to become acharya. And in the end, they all became acharya, even though none of them were qualified. So when he said they all became acharya, to me, that means they became initiating gurus of their own little mats.
it's not mentioned. Srila Prabhupada is not mentioned. He doesn't say here whether they were accepting disciples or not. That wasn't the issue with him. The issue was they chose an acharya one every year, at the years passing from 1936 to 1940, while Srila Prabhupada waited before he started his own branch. They kept electing new acharyas for all the Gaudiya Math, and they kept falling down.
Gaura, Prabhu, do you have that letter I sent you?
I can look it up.
Could you please forward it to me, because I can't find it.
Yeah.
Which letter is that?
That letter, so that I could actually, quote the exact, sentence.
I have it in my hand.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay, I've got the original right here. So there's no question of referring, and this was something that I, of course, studied. I don't remember anything here in the letter saying anything of criticizing his godbrothers for accepting disciples.
By becoming acharya, is that not synonymous with accepting disciples?
No, this is a misunderstanding. Acharya is a special title. It's now that these 11 all became different acharya pod, this, that, deva, that they call themselves acharyas. But no, they at best were called officiating acharyas. To be an acharya is a distinction between simply being a guru. In other words, we have special acharyas in our line who are accepted as parampara acharyas. They're gurus, and there were many gurus. They weren't the only gurus, but there were other gurus, but they were the sampradaya acharyas because they were the most prominent.
But
It's
you
not-
don't have, but when you have an acharya, so Bhaktisiddhanta did say, Prabhupada did state, and I want that letter, I want to see that letter so I could specify it,
what did he state?
that he stated that he instructed them to form the GBC and to wait for the to the acharya to be self-effulgent. He didn't say that he didn't really want an acharya, but if one shows up, okay, we'll accept him. He said to wait that the acharya will emerge and will be self-effulgent.
He was asked. Srila Prabhupada knows this. He said this, maybe not in this letter. I have to look over again. But Bhaktisiddhanta made it clear he did not want a single acharya to succeed him. And he didn't appoint one. In other words, if there was someone competent, Srila Prabhupada says in this letter, if there was someone competent, he would have said so. He says in the letter. But there was no one competent.
Here it is. Here's the letter on the screen.
Okay, fantastic. So let's read through it together, please, Prabhu, and please
No,
indulge.
just find the part you're talking about.
Please indulge me. Yeah,
Is this the section? Is this a section here? If Guru Maharaj could have seen someone who was
No.
qualified at that. Yes, go ahead.
okay.
What?
Listen
Jivan
to how he talks. He says,
Never recommended anyone.
Sridhar Maharaj is my old
Yes.
friend. He's the best of the lot. At least he executes the regulative principles of devotional service. I mean, that says a lot. I do not wish to discuss about activities of my godbrothers, but it is a fact they have no life for preaching work. All are satisfied with a place for residence in the name of a temple. They engage disciples to get foodstuff by transcendental devices and eat and sleep. They have no idea or brain about how to broadcast the cult of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. My Guru Maharaj used to lament many times for this reason. And he thought if one man at least had understood the principle of preaching, then his mission would be success. In the later days, my Guru Maharaj, he was very disgusted. Actually, he left this world earlier. Otherwise, he would have continued to live for more years. Still, he requested his disciples to form a strong governing body for preaching the cult of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He never recommended anyone to be acharya of the Gaudiya Math. Now, you're saying that means the head of the institution, and I guess as the head of an institution, he would have the exclusive position of initiating guru. And in the absence of an acharya, everyone becomes acharya. Is that what you're saying?
Let's see what Srila Prabhupada said.
He says, but Sridhar Maharaj is responsible for disobeying this order of the Guru Maharaj, and he and others who are already dead unnecessarily thought that there must be one acharya.
Yes.
If Guru Maharaj could have seen someone who was qualified at that time to be acharya, he would have mentioned. Because on the night before he passed away, he talked of so many things, but never mentioned an acharya. So an acharya would be someone who would be the head of the institution and would be initiating disciples.
Just like he did. That's what it's
Right.
like Bhaktisiddhanta
Right.
did. He was saying here, I'm not appointing anyone to act like I've done.
Right. So his idea was acharya.
But he already had a bunch of disciples who were sannyasis.
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
So his idea was acharya was not to be nominated amongst the governing body. He said openly, you make a GBC and conduct the mission. So his idea was amongst the members of GBC, who would come out successful in self-effulgent acharya would be automatically selected. So Sridhar Maharaj and his two associate gentlemen unauthorizedly selected one acharya, and later it proved a failure. The result is now everyone is claiming to be acharya, even though they may be kanishta adhikari with no ability to preach. So in some of the camps, the acharya is being changed 3 times a year. Therefore, we may not commit the same mistake in our Iscon camp. Actually, amongst my god brothers, no one is qualified to become acharya. So it is better not to mix with my god brother very intimately, because instead of inspiring our students, they may sometimes pollute them. And
This attempt was made previously by them, especially Madhav Maharaj and Tirtha Maharaj and Ban Maharaj, but somehow or other I saved the situation.
yeah,
This is going on. We should be very careful about them and not mix with them. This is my instruction to you all. Now,
right.
there's no reason to equate the term acharya with guru as far as initiations go. Acharya clearly is the person, special person. And the way Bhaktisiddhanta ran the Gaudiya Math was he was the only initiating person. He was the only acharya. It was who, and the way he organized it as acharya, he was the only one who initiated. Srila Prabhupada did the same thing. He was the acharya, and he was the only one who initiated while he was present.
Right.
And
therefore, it makes more sense to me. It makes more sense to me that if Prabhupada's disciples or Bhaktisiddhanta's disciples were not acharya material, and their position was simply to initiate, more reason why it stands more reason why it makes sense that the position of initiating disciples in Iscon, or even at that time in the Gaudiya Math, was more simply to bring them into the movement, because these movements, the Gaudiya Math, which Iscon is a branch of, is completely unprecedented.
Wait a minute.
Unprecedented. There was
hold
never
it.
a time in the history
Hold
of
on.
Vaishnavism where you had an organized institution, worldwide preaching mission like that.
Wait a second. I mean, so many. First of all, Iscon is not a branch of Gaudiya Math. That's what they're claiming. But Srila Prabhupada never founded Iscon as a branch of Gaudiya Math. It was
It
separate.
grew out of the Gaudiya Math. It grew out of the Gaudiya Math.
Because Srila Prabhupada was a disciple of the founder of the Gaudiya Math doesn't mean that his movement was part of the Gaudiya Math any more than the movement that Srila Prabhupada, the organization he founded in 1940, was part of the Gaudiya Math. It wasn't.
Okay.
The Gaudiya Vedanta Samhiti was not part of the Gaudiya Math.
Fair enough.
All right. Now, I want to go back to this understanding. Acharya, it's not that every guru is an acharya, and the way that it's been used since Bhaktisiddhanta's time. The acharya is a special person who can run a whole movement. But within that movement, there can be regular gurus who initiate people. That's what Srila Prabhupada was setting up before he left. I don't understand what the problem is here. If everyone's supposed to be on an acharya level, it's impossible, because the acharyas are special. The Sampradaya acharyas are special amongst even their peers. Okay? Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur had god brothers, but why is he the Parampara Acharya? Because of his accomplishments. And why is Srila Prabhupada the Parampara Acharya? Because of his accomplishments. So the Sampradaya Acharyas are not ordinary gurus, but in their presence, others can perform the function of initiation. In fact, Srila Prabhupada explains that a Madhyamadikari, and this is in Bhagavatam, I think the 7th canto, forget, I don't have it in front of me now, but he mentions that Madhyamadikaris are expected, he said, to accept disciples from the Kanishta and non-guru section. I mean, not non-guru, non-devotee section. They're expected to accept disciples from the Kanishta class and the non-devotee class. Madhyamadikaris. It doesn't say only sannyasi Madhyamadikaris. He says Madhyamadikaris. That can mean a grihastha. Okay, so what is the problem? Acharya is a title.
Now, the acharya could be used in different ways, Prabhu. The acharya could be used respectfully.
But the way Bhaktisiddhanta and Srila Prabhupada used the title was, as I'm explaining it, a Sampradaya Acharya.
How do you know?
But that's how they did it.
Well,
Listen,
no, I
but-
read Prabhupada's books, and acharya is used in many, many ways. The
But there's
acharya is
different
used for-
there's different levels of the way, and the way that Srila Prabhupada functions as acharya was the highest. He was a founder acharya. And
Fine.
Bhaktisiddhanta was a founder acharya.
Right.
So that makes them acharyas above any other acharyas.
Okay.
You have Madhvacharya, he's a founder acharya. We have our founders acharyas, and Bhaktisiddhanta was a founder acharya, and Srila Prabhupada was a founder acharya.
Okay, let's for a moment take a look at what these disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta, how they understood acharya to mean.
Well, they
When-
didn't
when
understand
we are-
very well. Listen, they didn't understand very well, because the first thing about acknowledging acharya is you follow his instructions.
Right.
And they couldn't. And that's why Srila Prabhupada used the word disgusted. He wasn't disgusted with the fact that they helped him establish 64 mats, great and small, under great austerities. That was not the problem. The problem was they did not understand the next phase in the movement, which was to go out and preach in the world. They couldn't get it. They couldn't go from the Kanishta platform to the Madhyam platform even. That's why he left at the age of 62. I mean, I'm 82. And he left at 62. Srila Prabhupada left at 80. So there was some disappointment there that he has set up this whole program. He convinced the English, British elite that the movement was genuine. He opened up 64 mosques, large and small, 50 of them in Bengal. He created dozens of sannyasis for the purpose of this next phase, which was to come out of India and preach around the world, and doing so accept disciples, as sannyasis do. That was the plan, but they couldn't carry it out. Instead, they were fighting amongst themselves even before he disappeared. He said, I wish to tear up the marble in the temples and print books, because all they're doing is fighting over the rooms.
And
that was going on.
Prabhupada's disciples were better?
I'm not making any historical comparisons. I'm just saying what the situation was at the time of the disappearance of Bhaktisiddhanta, why he was disappointed. Because the most important phase was to come out of the world at every town and village like what Chaitanya wanted. That's the Gaudiya Sampradaya.
Mhm.
So that self-effulgent acharya was not someone that he was expecting to emerge to take over the Gaudiya Math, because there was nobody there anywhere near that. But he was saying in the future, and who is he talking about? Who was the next Srila Prabhupada? It was our Srila Prabhupada. And he came out, and what happened? He carried out the instruction. He's the one who came out of India for the first time in 5,000 years with the real Bhagavad Gita. And
No,
the real Bhagavad.
Prabhu, you see, I don't agree with you. Here it says, so his idea was amongst the members of GBC who would come out successful in self-effulgent acharya would be automatically selected. So it's clearly he's still referring to the Gaudiya Maths.
Yes.
Still he's not
But they
thinking
did.
that
But so where
acharya
was
is
it?
gonna-
Where was that self-effulgent acharya? Did he ever come out?
No, yes, Prabhupada.
Yes.
Prabhupada.
Yes.
Yeah. But when
So what's the problem?
Bhaktisiddhanta,
So what's the problem? What do we disagree on here? I mean, I can't, we're both reading the same
what my
letter.
point is, what my point is that there is no traditional way, like there is the traditional method of succession, if you want to call it that. But when we're talking about international preaching movements like the Gaudiya Math or Iscon, it doesn't apply, because you got to manage the movement. It's got to be managed. If
Yeah.
we've got thousands of temples worldwide, there has to be some order. And that's what the GBC was intended to do, right? Provide
Yes.
order. So if the gurus are working under the so-called initiators are working under the authority of the GBC, that's not a traditional situation. That's very untraditional. So this whole idea
Wait,
of
hold it. You are assuming that the GBC was supposed to manage gurus.
we can see what happens when you
Well,
don't.
we know they did it. We did it, but I'm saying this. A guru does not need anybody's permission to select a disciple from anywhere in the world. The GBC manufactured all of these things and put the gurus under their control gradually over decades. But the fact of the matter is, the guru would only be subjected to the control of GBC if there was spiritual turpitude, if there was some disgraceful thing that the disciples themselves noticed or complained to the GBC, let's say, and then they could act, because everybody was considered a member of Iscon. The GBC had the jurisdiction over everybody, but they never had, if Srila Prabhupada never made it clear to anybody that a guru in Iscon would only accept disciples, or a sannyasi would only accept disciples with the permission of the GBC, or that they would be determined who is qualified to be GBC, to be a guru. And that's what they did. They pre-certified individuals. If that meant to a person who's looking for initiation, that he didn't have to be concerned about whether anybody was qualified. All he had to do was choose someone. He didn't have to examine anybody according to the Shastra 1 year. He didn't have to think about anything. All he had to do was somehow or another be attracted to this one person who was already qualified by the GBC to be a guru.
If that was the case, that's
the bogus part right there.
If the GBC actually has no bearing in that disciple guru relationship, then why are they called in if the guru ends up being, fallen? I mean, either you're involved, either you have authority over them or you don't.
No, you have authority, as I explained. If he's a guru claiming to be an Iscon guru, if he's not an Iscon, if he's not claiming anything to do, but if he's claiming to be an Iscon guru and using the Iscon facilities and so on and so on, but he does not live up to the standard. And let me say this, Srila Prabhupada asked for a constitution in 1976. And I was on the Constitutional Committee. And after he disappeared, that committee practically dissolved as everything else. But he said, to get the idea of what a constitution should be, consult the Catholic Code of Canon Law. Okay, I got a copy of that Catholic Code of Canon Law. He was talking about the 1917 version, and they had a revision in the early 80s. So I got a copy of that. And I looked through it. It was a paperback. It was available to the public. I got a copy and I looked at it. I could understand that what they did was they delineated the responsibilities, the character, the qualifications, the actions for misconduct for everyone from the cardinal down to the altar boy. And I could understand it was like their version of Varnashram. So I could understand that he wanted the Constitution to have the standards for every position, so that if somebody was out of post or behaving in a detrimental way or doing something they weren't supposed to do, that it would be clear by examining them against the standards outlined in the Constitution. Well, they never did it. So what standard is there for the Iscon gurus to be compared with? Okay, that's missing. So what you're saying,
that in itself shows that they are under administrative control, which is totally it is
absolutely
unprecedented.
I agree. We agree. Hallelujah. We agree.
Right.
We agree.
Right. We agree.
We agree on that.
Yeah.
The guru doesn't have to be. What makes a guru is a disciple. And nobody's a guru until they have a disciple. And his disciple has to decide he wants to be somebody's disciple. See? So you can't appoint a person as a guru. He's not even a guru because no one came to him and asked him, would you initiate me? So this whole thing is artificial. It's all artificial. It's not in our line. It's not the way things are supposed to go. There have been many standard gurus in our line for many, many hundreds of years.
And so therefore, my point is this, Prabhu, that first of all, considering Iscon as an international society, very unique in the annals of Vaishnava history, it's spreading all over the world. We have the necessity of initiation. We have people, aspiring members wanting to take initiation,
Right.
being inspired by individuals, genuinely inspired by the preaching of individuals, wanting to become their disciples and followers. But at the same time, you need to manage this movement, and you need Prabhupada. Most importantly, you need Prabhupada firmly established in the center.
Yes, yes, yes.
Firmly.
But you're
firmly-
jumping around. So what about those people who are not appointed by GBC versus who are Srila Prabhupada's disciples? They're not allowed?
Oh, they are, but they should start their own movement.
Well, they don't have to be under the GBC.
You're right. They should start
They're-
just like
they're-
Prabhupada told to Krishna. Just go. You can start your own movement.
That's right.
Absolutely. I totally accept that. But within Iscon, if we're talking about Iscon, then Prabhupada's order on May 28th that they should become officiating acharya. He used the word acharya. Why didn't he just say guru? Why did he say acharya?
Okay, I got you. So they were officiating on behalf of Iscon, really. you see?
Yes.
Okay, so but he
Yes.
told, was it Tushta, that you can start your own movement,
Yes.
which that
I
meant
agree.
that you're not under the GBC.
Yes, you're right. I agree totally.
Okay, so I think we agree. It's just a question of semantics.
Yes.
The problem has been that persons have been pre-certified, and that devotees are directed to pre-certify who represent Iscon because they're towing the line.
Yes.
They're towing the Iscon policy line, which includes changing the books, which includes changing the standards, which includes a number of things that makes this movement a lot different than the one I joined.
That's a different discussion altogether.
Okay, so
But
what is it?
what we're discussing is the framework of keeping the preaching mission of Iscon, the institution, going. So if you have all these new gurus,
Oh, okay, I got you. Okay, I got you.
then they have
I
to,
got
they're
you.
officiating
I got
acharya.
you. I got you. There's a form and there's substance.
Yes.
Right now, it's all about the form.
We're talking about the form right now.
That's right. We're talking about the form, and the form is a GBC that has divided itself into so many subtitles, so many assistants, so many codes, and how many this thing. All these things, they've expanded a big organization that Srila Prabhupada warned against. He didn't want all of that.
Yeah.
He said that the GBC may have 200 clerks in a skyscraper building. That means that he wanted the GBC person to be responsible
Yes.
for his own affairs. Anyway, so they have made a big organization. What's come out of it is an organized church facility.
Yeah,
It's
the
like an
problem is
ecclesiastic-
the problem is also the centralization, because if
Well,
they
sure,
allow
No,
if
no,
they
Srila
allow
Prabhupada-
if they allow the temple presidents to really kind of get into their seva independently, they would have
Yes,
been
yes. Srila
totally-
Prabhupada said the only centralization I ever approved was BBT. I wanted every temple to be organized separately, that the men all learned how to become expert about every way of management. He warned, I have it in print. He warned the GBC not to interfere unnecessarily with temple management. In fact, in the GBC direction of management, it says that a temple president cannot be removed without the consent of the assembled congregation. They have to vote.
Yeah.
When Damodar wanted to resign, excuse me, as temple president of Washington, I was the GBC. I accepted his resignation. He wanted to quit, but Srila Prabhupada wouldn't allow it. He said, no, there has to be a vote of the congregation, of the devotees, in favor of his leaving. In other words, even though he wanted to leave, he said, according to the GBC document, there must be a vote. So that had to happen, even though Damodar wanted to leave on his own. I had nothing to do with it. I wasn't asking him to leave. I never even wanted him to leave,
Mhm.
but he decided he.
Yeah.
So what are we now coming to focus
Okay,
on?
so this is okay. Let me just say then, this is what we agree upon. We agree upon the fact that Prabhupada and tradition encourages the disciple to become guru, especially if you're qualified. But in Iscon, if someone wanted to become guru in the full sense of the word, they can leave Iscon and start their own movement. Just like I feel Tripurari Maharaj is very honest, is a very honest devotee in the sense that he left, he wrote his own Bhagavad Gita, and he preached on his own terms. He has his own movement. Great. That's honorable as far as I'm concerned. In Iscon, if you're going to be using Prabhupada's books, Prabhupada's temples, Prabhupada's deities, Prabhupada's everything that Prabhupada established, then you have to follow the instructions of Srila Prabhupada as being an official, that you are initiating on behalf of Srila Prabhupada and Iscon, that you are an officiating acharya. Now, if you're not happy with that, then you can go start your own movement. And Prabhupada will bless you. And if you want to use Prabhupada's books, then go ahead, start your own movement.
You better use Prabhupada's books. You better use it because he told just don't change it.
Exactly. So
if you want to go out and start your own movement and have Srila Prabhupada's books as the basis and collect disciples or convince people to become devotees on the basis of Srila Prabhupada's teaching, then you're legitimate. You're legitimate.
Yes, I agree. So do we agree with that?
What I'm saying is these persons who claim to be officiating acharyas on behalf of Iscon and the GBC and so on, they're not always honest because they're changing things.
I totally agree.
So we have what's the problem? Now, what is it we don't agree on?
We don't know. We agree on everything.
Okay, fine. That's the purpose of our meeting. So what we're both agreeing.
And I wish you were closer so I could cook some prasadam for you.
Haribol.
I'd like that too.
I wish you were closer, Prabhu. I would do everything. I would cook a feast for you right now.
Jai. Don't forget to invite
so
me.
What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna be like that Muni who in his mind offered Lord Krishna, sweet rice. And so in my mind, Prabhu, I am offering you huge feast.
It's delicious. It's delicious.
I'd like to, we're going to start in 20 minutes. We still have 20 minutes before Sunanda comes on. But I'm just wondering, Ramanath Sukha Prabhu, our godbrother, he's been silently listening in the wings, and he's quite a wit himself. I'm just wondering, Ramanath Sukha, did anything arise for you during this conversation that you'd like to add to, or do you have a question? Ramanath Sukha, are you there? Or, gee, it must be.
Yeah, Haribol. I'm kind of multitasking. I'm in the kitchen right now.
Okay.
So just skip over me for now. But wonderful, senior devotee dialogue. It's very
so
nice.
my question is, do you agree?
Do I agree to agree? Yes.
You agree to what we were discussing and the conclusion. That's all I'm asking, because we were doing it for you. We were discussing it for you.
Oh, okay. Well, I think there's some fine tuning, I guess, of defining what acharya means, what founder acharya means, what guru means, and the distinctions between the two. And that's one thing. But you were discussing at the end about this whole problem of having the, what do you call it, the document, not the DOM, but the Constitution. The Constitution. Yeah, the Constitution. To me, this is like the biggest problem. Yes. And why can't they get a Constitution ratified and passed? It only makes sense if they don't want a Constitution.
Okay. You want my opinion?
Yes.
In other words, they would have to be held accountable to a Constitution.
Exactly. Exactement. In fact, that's exactly my opinion. The reason that there is no Constitution is that some person could do what they damn well please. And they couldn't do that under any post, whether it's Brahmin or whether it's temple president or whether it's GBC or whether it's guru. They couldn't do it because the standards are going to be there in print.
In print, yeah, exactly, in print.
So just but imagine this. Suppose a person comes and says, I'd like to join your society. You would say, well, here's a copy of our Constitution. If you agree on this Constitution, then you're welcome. Because it would make it clear what they were expected to do as a member, and what their allegiance was supposed to be.
As a member, as a temple president, as
Right,
a GBC,
exactly.
as a sannyasi, as a guru, et cetera, et cetera.
So why not? I'll tell you why not. Again, because they didn't want to be scrutinized, because they didn't want to come under anybody's control. They wanted to be free. They didn't want to have anyone look into their personal affairs. They didn't want anyone to look into their character. They didn't want anyone to criticize them in front of their disciples. They didn't want to have to go to court. Okay, and this happened. Like we had a child protection office.
It happens, and it's allowed to continue
That's right.
year after year, decade after decade, and meanwhile, corruption just is widespread.
They become acharya. They become acharya of them. Like, this is the idea, is that they become, unassailable. They reach a position like the 11 that were originally, appointed themselves.
Yeah, they become impervious to any kind of scrutiny.
Yeah.
They become like the Pope.
Exactly.
Like the king.
Exactly. They shut down Istigosi, any kind of dialogue. It's like nothing's welcome unless you're just a yes man.
And this is the problem. This is the problem with the guru system still within Iscon, is that the disciples look upon that initiator of theirs as being on that level. I see it. It's like it's to the point where it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that they actually see some of these devotees, sincere, wonderful devotees in their own right, but they place them in a position which is unassailable.
Okay, why? Because they're taught to be that way.
Yes,
they're taught that way. They're not taught who Srila Prabhupada is.
Yes, I agree.
That's the problem. That's the problem. And it shows no signs of abating. It's going to continue because the same conception of preconceived or pre-certified gurus is still there.
Yeah. And that Shakti, which is coming through every word of Srila Prabhupada's books, is being denied many of these devotees because they don't understand that the connection is ultimately to Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada is going to give you that transcendental realization through his books.
And not only that, Srila Prabhupada warned you cannot jump over him to the previous acharyas as authority. You can only understand he said this. I have it here, one of my cards, that you cannot understand my Guru Maharaj except through me. You may read a bunch of books, but you can't understand except through me. And same thing for Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He said, we don't require any instruction outside.
But what about when current gurus say the same thing? Because they do. Some of them say you can't understand Srila Prabhupada except through me.
Well, then they are putting their foot in their mouth, because we know the whole movement is based on his books. So if you can't understand Srila Prabhupada through his books, then what's the point of printing them? We distribute millions of books so Srila Prabhupada's teachings can be understood in so many different languages. And if you can't understand Srila Prabhupada through his purports and through his logic and reasoning and his dedication and his revelation, then what's the point of having the books?
Yes.
If they're simply opinions. So the whole thing is completely cockeyed. The whole thing is going on because there's no constitution.
So
there's no standard. Besides, the standards there in Srila Prabhupada's books, but because you can't have everybody read all the books to bring out all the standards to incorporate it into a constitution. So you can't expect rank and file devotees to do this. It's supposed to be done by the leadership to help people make the right choice. To help people.
Isn't there some committee to push the Constitution through?
Yes. So I spoke to Sesha Prabhu, who
Sesha
making inquiry I was told, oh, the Shesha Prabhu is working on that. So I saw Shesha. I think it was in Mayapur last time I saw him. Maybe it was 3 years ago. And I said, so Shesha Prabhu, how is the Iscon constitution going? Because I remember our godbrother, formerly Vishwambar Das Goswami, he said, Iscon's a free for all. If we, as long as there's no Iscon constitution in place, then it's just, it's a free for all. I said,
There's-
well, can you give me an example of why Iscon constitution is important? And he said, well, it should be very clear. What are the responsibilities of a GBC? What are the responsibilities of a temple president? Who do the disciples belong to? Do they belong to the guru or do they belong to Iscon? If the guru leaves, does he have the right to take those disciples with him? Who does the money belong to that the guru receives? Does it belong to the guru? Does it belong to Iscon? So he finally gave up being temple president because he just said, there's nothing in place. When I asked Sesha a few years back, how's it going? He said, oh, we're working on it.
Yeah, working. For decades, they're working.
Just
Besides,
no coming.
the reason we have the need for a CPO, a Child Protection Office, to protect the children of Iscon from their own adult members. You got that? Anyone who joins a society that requires a CPO to protect their children from the adult members wouldn't join the movement if they knew that. So why do they need a CPO? Because there's no constitution. Because when there's something that goes wrong, the CPO, and I talked to dear Govinda, who ran the CPO, who had a PhD in that field, who was actually working at the Department of Children and Families when I was there. He was working with the Child Protection Unit, told me that every time he tried to investigate, he was stonewalled by the GBC and their friends. He couldn't carry out an investigation with the cooperation of the leadership. So there was a CPO, but they couldn't really function. He had 100 cases. And when he did find someone guilty of what they did with child abuse, and they did get some sort of reprimand, within a year or two, they were back in the same kind of position. So the whole thing could have been completely overrun with the Constitution. Because as soon as somebody stepped out of line as a Gurukul teacher or as a sannyasi or whatever, their whole character, their standard would be right there in print. But because it wasn't there, we had to have a CPO. Now, what spiritual society is there that requires protection of its children from its own adult members? I mean, is that a spiritual society in the first place? It came to that because there was no constitution. And we've had child abuse in this movement since years and years and years, and it's still going on. Because there are people in charge who shouldn't be there because they weren't vetted, because they weren't checked out. Maybe they had no background checks, who knows what. But we actually have pedophiles in the history of this movement that were managing children. Why? Because there was no law and order. There was no law and order. Without a constitution, there's no law and order.
And that's such an important point you're making, Prabhu, because it comes down right from the top. There's no law and order from the point of initiations. If there's no law and order established between that guru-disciple relationship, there is chaos everywhere else. Because they can ultimately do whatever they want, and that's what's happening.
Ultimate law and order is between the guru or the GBC member, the Brahmin, and Srila Prabhupada, because the Constitution will be the embodiment of the standards that Srila Prabhupada gave us. So I get back to this argument, and I may be criticized for saying it, as to why this has happened. The ultimate root cause, in my opinion, is that there's not enough love for Srila Prabhupada. There's love, but not enough. Not enough. And the not enough turns out to be offenses to the holy name, which means, one of them, to neglect the order of the spiritual master. That's been neglected. We're being put in the yellow pages along with the Hindu societies. We're being listed under Hindu. We're being called devotional Hinduism. We've been called member of the Hindu family of faiths. Yeah, we're being churchified. As I should have used the word churchianity.
Yeah.
All because the standards of Srila Prabhupada are disobeyed. Not only are they disobeyed, not only are they ignored, but they're contravened. And therefore, when anyone ignores an order of Srila Prabhupada, what happens? A controversy is instantly created. So we have an Iscon swimming in a sea of controversies as a matter of course. And they all come from neglecting the order of the spiritual master in some form or another. And there are other offenses of the holy name that are being committed. For example, preaching to the unfaithful or considering the chanting of the holy name to be pious. It's not material piety. Material piety will get you a better birth, but spiritual piety will get you back to Godhead. And there's a difference between the piety of organized religion or secular religion and Iscon. So to equate the piety of Iscon with other piety is an offense to the holy name. To preach to the unfaithful means that if you don't determine that the person that you, and this is given on a lecture Shabbat delivered in 1970 in Los Angeles. He talks about the 10 offenses. And the example that he gives for preaching to the faithless is this. He says, a spiritual master who initiates a person who is not faithful is an offender. Now, how do we know who is faithful? Srila Prabhupada said 6 months of 16 rounds a day and 4 regulative principles. That proves the faith in the holy name. And if that faith isn't determined before initiation, the person will go away sooner or later. So any initiations performed on this planet in the name of Harinam, it's not that Harinam initiation is less important than Gayatri. And that's why some people are initiated into Harinam and other organizations besides Iscon even, without determining their actual faith to the holy name, which can only be determined in the way Srila Prabhupada announced. 6 months, which is a long time in a conditioned soul's life, 6 months of chanting the holy name, 16 rounds, and 6 months of following the 4 regulative principles. Otherwise, where is the demonstration of faith in the holy name? That you don't have enough faith to chant it 16 rounds for 6 months to prove your position? So the holy name, this is the Hare Krishna movement. This is the Yuga Dharma. The first initiation is the most important initiation because faith to the holy name has to be determined from the get-go. So other organizations, and I don't know to what degree this is being ignored in Iscon, but that's the instruction Srila Prabhupada gave to avoid that offense. So if you go down to 10 offenses, and to equate the word Veda with Hinduism is another offense. It's an offense to the authority of the Vedic literature, which is another offense to the holy name. If the movement has so many offenses to the holy name going on, then how is it the Hare Krishna movement? How is it representing the Yuga Dharma? See?
Ramanath Sukha has had his hand up for a little while. We're going to be segueing over
Yeah,
to
I
Sunanda,
mean,
depending on how quickly he wants us to do that. I'm also interested in hearing Sunanda Prabhu's comments on anything that's been discussed, even though this is not exactly relevant to his talk on what we'll have to do. Actually, we'll have to end this and we'll have to all come back. Otherwise, it's going to be one long, huge, merged.
Okay. Well, this is your doing.
Oh no, I'm here to serve you. Ramanath Sukha, go ahead, speak your piece now or forever hold your peace.
Yeah, okay, simple question. Did Prabhupada ever talk about how the Constitution would be enforced? In other words, a judicial system.
Obviously, once it's in writing, the enforcement is that it's distributed to all the members. So he formed at the time the GBC was formed, he formed a standing committee called the Privilege Committee. A committee I was on off and on for years. I was on that off and on for years. And the Privilege Committee's duty was to handle such a dispute of misconduct, of disagreement between temples, of disciplinary actions. In fact, when some of the gurus were clearly shown not to be chanting their rounds, the Privilege Committee called them out on it. So there was a way of enforcement. There was a Privilege Committee that was set up by Srila Prabhupada to enforce the principles he left with us. So I'm not saying that to be the sole solution, but it's something like that to enforce, because one way you enforce it is everybody knows what it is. The Constitution would only be a few 4 or 5 pages. It doesn't have to be a long book, and outlining all the different positions and posts and what was expected and qualifications and so on and so on. So it'd be a heck of a lot better than not having anything, which is what's now there. There's no law and order because there's no law. The laws are in the books, but you can't explain.
I agree.
Remember, you understand the
It's
books.
almost like you need some kind of a Iscon court, like a Bhakti Nota court as a judge to make sure, people are actually following. I mean, because, the Constitution could be there, but if it's not enforced, then it's another farce.
Sunanda Prabhu, before we end this session and start your session, did you have any comment on anything that you heard or a question or anything before we?
No, my comments will only extend this conversation another
Okay.
few hours.
But I have one question. May I read one sentence before we depart?
Yes, please.
Okay, this is an official statement from the PR department of Iscon. It was given at the end of a position paper published at the beginning of the so-called pandemic. This is the last sentence defining what Iscon is. Iscon is a Gaudiya Vaishnava, in parentheses, monotheistic tradition within the broader Vedic or Hindu family of faiths. Now, I find at least 3 namaparades in this sentence. And there are probably more. But this is the official definition from the PR department that's presented to the public. Vedic or Hindu family of faiths? Faiths? Hindu? Vedic? Synonymous with Hindu? How many aparads are there in the sentence? That's all I want to say. Finished.
Thank you. So, Pradyumna Prabhu, just in terms of the technicality behind all of this, so we just had a whole discussion on Guru Tattva and Srila Prabhupada's orders to the GBC. So, do you want me to shut this off and then we all return back? Should we separate?
You don't need to do that. All you need to do is end your stream so that you don't get the strike again on your stream.
Why just because
because of what Sunanda's going to talk about. You don't want to stream this on YouTube at all.
Yes. Okay. So I'll just hit end then?
Yeah, you can end the stream, and I'll if you make me host, I can record Sunanda's talk right on my machine here.
Okay, so I'll end this.
So what do we do? What do I do? I'm supposed to be with Sunanda here on this thing.
Yeah.
What do I do? I just stay put?
Pradyumna, answer, please.
My answer, I think it's great we love it, your inputs. And
No, that's not the point. The point is
everybody can stay. You just have to stop the stream.
okay. So
Nobody has to leave.
I'm hitting end. Okay, done. So end meeting for all, right?
No. Just end the stream, Prabhu.
Gaura, Prabhu, when you're doing the live stream on YouTube, when you end it after the end, you just have to end the live stream.
Too many people talking. I'm sorry. I have to mute some people. It's getting too blurred.
Virginia, take over.
Gaura, please end the live stream.
You're muted. Press Alt D to unmute. Why can't I hear it?
Press what? Unmute.
I have to mute Madhavi
Yeah.
because she's talking. And
Press
hear
what
it.
to unmute?
okay, so I just hit end already, Pradyumna. Where else do you want me to go?
You have to end the live stream on YouTube.
Okay.